Most people define hydration as a simple volume problem. If you are thirsty, you drink water to top off the tank. However, the body doesn't guarantee that fluid reaches the specific compartments where it's actually needed. Instead of a static tank, the human organism exists in a constant state of thermodynamic equilibrium. Millions of charged ions rapidly fire across cellular membranes. This chart visualizes exactly how that water is partitioned. Total body water is distributed with mathematical precision. Roughly 66% is sequestered inside your cells, the intracellular fluid, while the remaining 34% makes up the extracellular fluid outside them. This partition is held in place by osmotic pressure, a physical force generated by mineral solutes that cannot freely cross the cellular barrier. The most critical mineral is sodium, anchoring water outside the cell, while potassium dominates the interior. The human body defends this balance aggressively. The concentration of solutes in your blood plasma must stay within a highly restrictive clinical range of 286 to 290 milliosmoles per kilogram. Hydration is an actively managed thermodynamic state. It is dictated by the chemical potential of mineral solutes pulling water into alignment. When water moves across a biological membrane, it follows the principle of osmosis. It migrates passively from areas of low solute concentration toward areas of high concentration to reach equilibrium. If the concentration of sodium in your blood spikes, a state called hypernatremia, the rules of osmosis dictate that water is stripped from the surrounding cells to dilute the excess salt. The result is severe cellular shrinkage. Conversely, if extracellular sodium drops too rapidly, water rushes into the cells, causing them to swell. Beyond the cellular wall, fluid moving between the blood vessels and the surrounding tissue is governed by a separate mechanism known as Starling forces. The first force at play is capillary hydrostatic pressure. This is the physical push of fluid from inside the vessel against the capillary wall, driving water out into the tissue. Opposing this is plasma-oncotic pressure. Proteins in the blood, primarily albumin, exert a continuous osmotic pull that attempts to draw that same fluid back into the vasculature. If this mathematical balance fails, for instance, if plasma proteins drop due to malnutrition, the inward pull is lost. Fluid leaks unchecked into the tissue, resulting in systemic edema and a failure to deliver nutrients. The primary engine responsible for keeping those forces stable is the kidney. Each kidney relies on over 1 million functional units called nephrons to regulate systemic electrolyte balance. Blood first enters the nephron through the glomerulus, pushing raw filtrate into Bowman's capsule to begin a continuous cycle of sorting and reclaiming. As this filtrate moves into the proximal tubule, the body immediately reclaims approximately 65% of the filtered sodium and water through active transport. The remaining fluid drives deeper into the renal medulla, entering the thick ascending loop of Henle. This specific segment is impermeable to water. Instead, it utilizes the NKCC2 transporter, which actively pumps out sodium and chloride into the surrounding tissue to create a steep osmotic gradient. By doing this, the nephron operates as an intricate, continuous filtration engine that entirely depends on the deliberate manipulation of sodium to concentrate urine and retain water. These nephrons do not decide how much water to keep on their own. They take orders from a macroscopic endocrine network that reacts instantly to drops in blood pressure. When pressure falls, juxtaglomerular cells release renin, triggering the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or ROS. This cascade results in the adrenal glands producing a potent hormone called aldosterone. Aldosterone targets the distal portions of the nephron, forcing them to increase sodium channel expression. More sodium is pulled back into the blood, and water predictably follows, rapidly expanding extracellular fluid volume. Simultaneously, if blood plasma becomes too concentrated with solutes, the posterior pituitary gland deploys antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. ADH acts directly on the collecting duct, inserting aquaporin-2 water channels that allow the kidney to execute emergency water retention. Your body's hydration status is an autonomic hormonal response, highly engineered to rescue blood pressure and plasma volume the second they begin to fail.
To see what happens when this delicate physiological model is pushed to its breaking point, we can examine the extreme demands of elite athletics, like the 2026 Premier League title race. Navigating a congested fixture list while competing in a Champions League semifinal places an immense physical toll, requiring strict management from team leadership. Looking at this chart tracking a player over a 90-minute high-intensity match, we see how quickly the body burns through its reserves, losing nearly 1,000 milligrams of sodium per hour of play. As sodium plummets, blood plasma viscosity climbs in tandem. The blood becomes thicker, forcing the heart to work significantly harder just to deliver oxygen to the working muscles. This systemic fatigue inevitably manifests on the pitch. By the 55th minute against Newcastle, 2 key players were forced off with muscular issues. These soft tissue injuries and cramps occur because the balance between essential minerals collapses. Calcium triggers muscle contraction, but the body relies on magnesium to initiate the relaxation phase. When sweat depletes magnesium, the muscle cannot release. The damage extends to the nervous system. A severe cognitive error, like an air kick in the first minute of play, is a failure of motor coordination that happens when intracellular potassium rhythms are corrupted, slowing neural impulse transmission. Muscular spasms and cognitive decline are the direct macroscopic result of microscopic electrolyte bankruptcy. Restoring that electrolyte balance requires sourcing the right minerals. Historically, this meant turning to traditional harvesting methods, like channeling seawater into clay-lined ponds to produce Celtic sea salt. Celtic salt retains its natural moisture and a trace mineral profile that includes magnesium. In contrast, standard table salt is heavily refined to achieve a pure sodium chloride product, utilizing synthetic anti-caking agents like calcium silicate to prevent clumping. However, relying on contemporary sea salt introduces a severe environmental variable. The degradation of global ocean plastics means that synthetic polymers continually break down into the world's water supply. Toxicological data reveals that over 90% of global sea salt samples contain microplastic fragments, prompting many to abandon ocean sources entirely and turn to ancient inland rock salt deposits. Himalayan pink salt is free of modern ocean contaminants because it was sealed underground long before the invention of plastics. Yet laboratory analysis shows its 84 trace minerals exist in such minuscule quantities that they offer negligible nutritional value. Furthermore, extracting it requires heavy industrial machinery and explosives. This mining process can introduce a completely different toxicological threat: heavy metal contamination, including traces of lead and arsenic. Selecting an optimal electrolyte source today requires a calculated compromise, balancing your physiological need for unrefined minerals against the systemic risk of modern toxicological exposure. Once the appropriate salt is sourced, replacing the standard pinch of salt approach with exact evidence-based oral rehydration protocols is essential. For heavy sweating or illness, the target sodium concentration is 40 to 75 millimoles per liter. This is achieved by dissolving exactly 1/2 to 1 full teaspoon of salt into a liter of water. You can accelerate absorption by adding a small amount of glucose, like honey. This utilizes the sodium-glucose transporter in the small intestine to actively pull water across the barrier. This synergistic combination pulls water directly into the bloodstream, restoring your plasma volume significantly faster than drinking plain water or a salt solution alone. It is crucial to note that pediatric and elderly populations must stay strictly at the lower end of this dosing spectrum, as their kidneys possess a reduced capacity to filter extreme solute loads. Ultimately, fluid stability relies on the precise intersection of the kidney's RAAS endocrine loop, thermodynamic fluid partitioning, and complex mineral biochemistry. Hydration is a highly engineered, active chemical intervention essential for optimizing structural integrity and sustaining elite human performance.